right, so kicking off our unit for cellular energetics, we're going to start talking about cellular energy and enzymes. So these topics correspond to the AP College Board's topics 3.1 through 3.4. So this is unit 3, and there are several topics in this, but these are the ones that correspond really more towards enzymes and starting our entire unit about cellular energetics. So 3.4, and this is kind of the order in which these slides are arranged. 3.4 is cellular energy, so what is energy? Why do we care? 3.2, enzymes themselves. So 3.2 and 3.1 are talking about enzymes, their function, their structure of enzymes and whatnot. And then the environmental impacts on enzyme function. So what can impact enzyme function is going to be 3.3. So that's what I'll end up talking. I'll finish talking about enzymes when I get to that. So this corresponds to textbook sections 2.5 and 3.3 through 3.4. So I have a little enzyme here in this picture, enzyme. It's got an active site, and then we have the substrate which it works on. All right, so let's get into talking about energy in general and chemical reactions. So biochemical changes involve energy. Chemical reactions occur when atoms have enough energy to combine or change bonding partners. And we're going to focus on two big chemical reactions, the general ones, during this unit. So that'll be photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So those are huge chemical reactions, and that's kind of the main focus of this unit, including enzymes and how they are important players in these big chemical reactions. So in general, for chemical reactions, energy input must exceed energy loss to maintain order and to power cellular processes such as photosynthesis and respiration, and a whole bunch of other processes that happen. So chemical reactions involve changes in energy. Energy can be defined as two ways: the capacity to do work and the capacity for change. So in biochemical reactions, energy changes are usually associated with changes in chemical composition and properties of molecules. So a little picture here, energy in human life. We have chemical energy goes into the human via carbs, fats, and others like foods. That's going to be converted into ATP, body's energy, right? That's going to be used for metabolic processes. We're going to lose heat during this process at several steps here. And then we'll have chemical waste from these metabolic processes such as carbon dioxide and water, right? So those changes are occurring during these chemical reactions. So more about energy. All forms of energy can be considered as either potential energy, and that's the energy of state or position or stored energy, or kinetic energy. That's the energy of movement. So the type of energy that does work, right? That makes things change. Energy can be converted from one form to another in various processes. So metabolism, like I was saying, we have a lot of reactions that occur, processes that happen in our body, and those are metabolic processes. So metabolism is the sum of all chemical reactions occurring in a biological system at any given time. Metabolic reactions involve energy changes. Energy is either stored in or released from chemical bonds, right? We really love those bonds because that's where we can store that energy. So a chemical reaction will occur spontaneously if total energy consumed by breaking bonds in reactants is less than the total energy released by forming bonds and products. So it has to be this give and take, right? And there has to be a net reaction, right? A total energy released for the reaction to occur spontaneously. So we have two basic types of metabolism, and this last slide was talking about that too. Catabolism, catabolic processes, and anabolism, anabolic processes. So one of those two basic types of metabolism are anabolic reactions. These types of reactions link simple molecules to form complex ones. So you can think of going from mono to poly, something like that, right? This is going to require a net energy inputs. Those can be considered endergonic reactions or endothermic reactions, so they take in a net energy input. And I know in chemistry you learn that all types of reactions require energy, and that's true, but this one is saying there's a net energy input. So whatever was released during this reaction is not going to be enough to overcome the amount that was actually needed for that reaction to occur. So energy is captured in the chemical bonds that form in anabolic reactions. So we create these bonds, we'll go from mono to mono, right? and we create that bond to make a polymer or dimer or whatever, and in that bond we're going to store energy. That's what we're seeing here in this anabolic reaction. So we have going on this little section, in an endergonic or anabolic reaction, rolling the ball uphill requires an input of energy, right? So free energy from the bottom of the hill to the top of the hill is going to require a net energy input to go from reactants to products. The other type is just the opposite. These are catabolic reactions. This is a net energy is released, right? So these can be called exergonic or exothermic reactions. So this is when complex molecules are broken down into simpler ones, and energy stored in those chemical bonds is going to be released. So you can think of a big process we've learned too, hydrolysis. The breaking of polymers down into monomers is a catabolic reaction, so breaking stuff down. So in an exergonic or catabolic reaction, the reactants behave like a ball rolling down a hill, and energy is going to be released. So again, remember, this is a net energy is released, okay? Some energy was necessary to get that reaction to occur. There was an initial input of energy that was required, but overall, the amount of energy that was released is going to exceed the amount that was necessary for that reaction to occur. So there are two basic types of metabolism, like I was saying, right? And what's interesting about these two basic types of metabolism is that catabolic and anabolic reactions are actually often coupled in these processes and organisms that do these, which is saying that the energy released in catabolic reactions is often used to drive anabolic reactions to do biological work. So they are coupled with each other. So you can see here, larger molecules, and whatnot are broken down in catabolic processes, and as those are broken down, energy is released in the form of ATP, and that ATP is going to be used to power anabolic reactions, those building up of smaller molecules, to create those larger molecules. So we have them coupled with each other. That's very typical in these processes, especially in photosynthesis and respiration, which you'll see later on. So this brings us to our laws of thermodynamics, right? And kind of why these processes, or could be a reason why these processes are often coupled with each other. So the laws of thermodynamics apply to all matter and energy transformations in the universe. So the two laws we really care about here. The first law is that energy is neither created nor destroyed. And the second law is that useful energy tends to decrease and disorder tends to increase. When energy is converted from one force to another, some of that energy becomes unavailable for doing work, right? So this part right here, disorder tends to increase. This is actually known as entropy, which we'll talk about in a second. So entropy, right? So no physical process or chemical reaction is actually 100% efficient. Some of that released energy is lost in a form associated with disorder. This energy is so dispersed that it is considered to be unusable. Entropy is the measure of disorder in a system. So as a result of energy transformation, disorder tends to increase, like we said in the last slide. So if you look at this here, we have, if the particles represent gas molecules at normal temperatures inside a closed container, which of the illustrated configurations came first, right? Obviously, this one had to go first, and then over time, those atoms, those molecules, dispersed inside of that closed container, right? So over time, you can see disorder was increasing. So we had an increase in disorder in this first situation. Same deal down here. If you toss bricks off a truck, which kind of pile of bricks would you more likely produce? Obviously, this one is the one that we would expect to see. The bricks would all just fall in a pile, and there would be all a hot or unorganized mess, right? Versus this situation over here, which will require work and energy to produce a perfectly stacked little pyramid of bricks. So how entropy changes due to a chemical reaction. So increased entropy means that products are more disordered or random than its reactants. Decreased entropy means that there are fewer products than reactants. And in order for this to happen, this requires energy to achieve this. Metabolism creates more disorder. More energy is lost to entropy than the amount of order that is actually stored. So for example, an anabolic reaction is needed to construct 1 kilogram of animal body require catabolism of about 10 kilograms of food, right? And that goes back to that whole 10% rule you learned in pre-epibiome, saying that 90% of the energy that can be converted from the sun to the plants, to the primary consumers and stuff, 90% of that energy is lost to that disorder, right? It's lost to entropy. So if you look at this here, we have fatty acids, carbs, and oxygen going into mitochondria so that we can create ATP. So we can break it down, right? And then get ATP out of it. And then we can use that to build up whatever, right? But you're also noticing that CO2, H2O, and heat are being lost to the universe via entropy, right? So here's an important part. Life requires a constant input of energy to maintain order. And if there is a critical loss of order or energy, or critical loss of order or energy flow is going to result in death.